on the Harvard campus and the perceived lack of appropriate response from the leadership of Harvard. Lauder Business School has withdrawn from the network, thereby expressing solidarity with the Jewish student community at Harvard. I just thought that was interesting. I have nothing, nothing to add to that, but the reverberations are still going on, and some people are objecting. Any thought on that? If not, we move right on.
What network was it?
It was a network of business schools in Europe that had this relationship with Harvard.
So why did that express solidarity?
They closed off. They don't want to collaborate. Listen, I'm not explaining what they did. I'm describing what they did. They cut off all collaboration to stand in solidarity with the Jewish students of Harvard. That's how they described it. So, okay, Steve?
Along those same lines, I just want to express my disappointment that President Obama decided to stick his nose into it and tell Harvard not to fire their plagiarist, anti-Semitic president. Actually, she's probably not anti-Semitic. She's just extremely not good in Congress.
Okay, and I'll send a note on to President Obama, and I'm sure he's crushed by our disapproval. But yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I agree with you. Next, moving on to a new thing, because, by the way, the Harvard thing is far from resolved. Since the decision made to keep the President Gay, I think, since the decision was made to stick with her, they lost another $200 million gift. And even for Harvard, that represents serious money. Okay, next. Contrary to expectations, people have been actively surveying the Gazan population since the Israelis invaded following October 7th. And they have been doing studies of the population. I want to stipulate that what I'm going to share with you are surveys made of a terribly distressed population, okay? And does that affect their comments, their thoughts, even their accessibility to be interviewed? The answer is yes, of course. Question number one, and this is as of this week, right? From October 7th till now. Have Gazans been more or less radicalized than they were last year? Anyone want to take a shot before I pull back the curtain with the results? Do you think that the Gazan population is more radicalized or less radicalized since, if you will, since October? Howard?
I think everything goes backwards from logic. Like every time Trump gets indicted again for another crime, his ratings go up.
Bless you, Dee.
Logic would say the opposite. So in this case, logic would say the Gazans would say, "Oh my God, what have we been doing to ourselves?" And so the exact opposite must be what happened. That they said, "Oh, this is great. We'll get bombed to smithereens."
So you're saying that you expect the survey to show less radicalized, at least not more radicalized. More radicalized.
Radicalized.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything can go backwards.
Brian, it's good to see you, Brian Seafried. Hi. Good. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see you. Okay. Now, and the West Bank population, since the beginning of the October War, is more radicalized, less radicalized, no change. We're talking the West Bank. They're not invaded, if you will.
More.
How do you, what you want to guess?
More.
You think more? Okay. And now pull back the curtain. Here we go. The West Bank population is incredibly more radicalized. They're not under fire. They're not whatever in the war, but the response, they are more radicalized. And that has implications for the future. 1/3 of Gazans regret what has happened, regret October 7th and what followed. 1/3 of Gazans. 51% of Gazans think that after the war, Hamas will still be in charge. Did you get the tension there? A sizable minority regret that this whole thing got started. And a majority, bare majority, believes that when the Israeli troops withdraw, when the fighting stops, whatever it means, when the war enters, Hamas will still be in charge. And that, of course, will affect the level of support from the local population for Hamas. Because if you believe that that group is going to be in charge, you don't want to be on the side of those who are opposing that group, because that could be painful when it's all over. 51% of Gazans say after the war, Hamas will still be in charge. 73% of the West Bankers believe that after the war, Hamas will still be in charge. This is huge. Now, again, I do emphasize statistical strength, validity here, got to be a little bit in question just because of the situation. Nevertheless, you can say the West Bank has been more radicalized, and their support for Hamas has tremendously increased. Increased at the cost to whom?
Fatah.
Authority.
Fatah, the
And
Palestine Authority,
Abbas.
Abbas. I mean, Abbas is like a big box into which all of the opposition. There was an article in the New York Times just a couple of days ago. Abbas must go now. This is fascinating. 33% of all Palestinians, all Hamas, Gaza and West Bank, 33% favor a two-state solution.
Oh.
What does that number mean to you? 33% favor a two-state. Steve?
I actually think that's a good sign, because even if they're supporting Hamas and Hezbollah and all of those, they want a one-state solution. I think that there's a growing group of people that may want peace. The problem is they have no political power.
Any other thoughts?
I would- I
we're
would
we're
disagree.
interpreting numbers and we can't be sure. But any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say if 30% want a two-state solution, then 70% want a one-state solution and
Right.
want all of Israel.
I think when I read the numbers, Brian, that's where I fell. That 70, you could read it the other side, 70% of all Palestinians, Gaza, West Bank, oppose a two-state solution. If they oppose a two-state solution, the only alternative is a one-state solution, which means the end of Israel.
But it depends on what you're comparing it to. The question is whether that's a growing number or a declining number, and I actually think it's a growing number.
Okay, I mean, I can't comment on that. I mean, you might be right. I don't know. I just have the numbers that are in front of me. Hear this. 95% of all Palestinians believe that Israel is committing war crimes. 95%. 1 in 5 Gazans believe that Hamas has carried out war crimes. 1 in 5. Risa is shaking her head. She's peeved. Okay.
Does all Palestinians include Palestinians within Israel?
No, West Bank and Gaza.
Okay.
However, in the West Bank, fewer than 10% believe that Hamas has committed war crimes. Are you getting a picture? Zach, please.
I just think it's hard to do any kind of survey or statistics with someone who's watching a bomb go off every 5 minutes. And if you look over and every member of your family is dead, to say that someone is asking you questions about how you feel, I think it's just pretty out there.
Yeah, that's clearly true. But in some strange way, it hasn't radicalized the Gaza population, whereas the West Bank population has been radicalized. What does this show us about the strength of the Palestinian Authority to make peace or to take over? They're talking about this, to take over Gaza the day the war is over, and that everyone would welcome that. I mean, no matter what and Zach, you're totally correct. It's a bomb is dropping. How do you feel about the people who just dropped the bomb? I love them. They're good people. No. Yes, you're correct. Sukasa.
I think one thing is, I think that the Palestinian, the West Bankers, I think they like the fact that the Gazans are, in a way, they're fighting for them. They're standing up to Israel, because the West Bank, they felt like they've been occupied for 75 years, and they have not been able to get a foothold. And I think that they're supporting them psychologically. They're very happy that Gaza is taking the battle to the Israelis.
And I'm going to add to that, and I certainly agree with you, Sukasa. I'm going to add to that. They know that the Palestine Authority is insanely corrupt. It's not Stanley, it's not the Zion. Everyone is happily saying that the PA is incredibly corrupt and that they have done nothing to benefit the Palestine Authority during their many years of control. What you're looking at,
neither has Hamas, though.
Right.
If you would have a vote today in the West Bank, Hamas or the Palestine Authority,
Hamas
wins big time.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to understand how threatening that is, Steve.
I think it's also very easy for the people in the West Bank who aren't being bombed to be all excited and have these other people who are getting killed in the process of eliminating whom the West Bankers consider their enemy.
Terrific. And yes, I mean, when you have not a spread of years or months or weeks on the data, you can only look at one set of data and you can't draw huge conclusions. You just can't. And for the reason that Steve offers. But I'm suggesting to you that if this data is known to Stanley and to you, a very select group, Israel knows, United States knows, and the notion that the Palestine Authority could step in as a trusted partner, it's a little shaky. I'm being nice. Sue Casa.
Yeah, why do you think the U.S. government is pushing that? Because it's so obvious about the PA, it's not going to work.
You're asking a question, and I think this is my look. The Secretary of State wanted me to take over the negotiations. I'm frankly too busy, but I think there is a major push to encourage an internal revolution in the PA, and that the pressure that the PA should take it is going to be connected with PA should take it once you have a change of leadership. I think that that's part of the deal. I mean, don't ask me for proof. I don't need proof. I'm a rabbi. I speak directly with God. But that's how I would feel. Steve?
With all this data, I don't understand why more and more Americans, or in particular the president and some of the people in the administration, are backing away from this notion that every single Hamas leader needs to be found and killed and Hamas ended, because if they exist, this will never end.
I'm going to say this, Steve. I think the United States administration fully supports the notion of assassinating all of the top Hamas leaders. I think they've said this over and over and over and over again. It's the other part of your statement that the United States doesn't think is realistic as an ideology to uproot Hamas as the goal of the war. The United States says is unrealistic. I can just say that. Now, we're going to go on because, believe it or not, there are a few other things of really great interest. I have a pair of white sneakers with a red, I don't know, line.
Logo.
What?
Like a logo.
Yeah. And I don't even know that I'm wearing them. But people stop me and say, what a wonderful looking pair of sneakers. And I have to look down to see what I'm wearing. I care.
I get that all the time.
You do too? Yeah, what do you wear?
I wear Vans.
Vans. I mean, that's okay. That's California. I mean, that's checkerboard California. I raised that because some of you remember the name of Kanye West. Kanye West. Do you remember him?
No.
What?
I don't have any cells in my brain that have any connection with that concept.
You mean Kanye West?
Kanye
Yes.
West,
Kanye West.
now known as
Been
you.
erased. I'm not interested in hearing anything about what he said.
Okay, so you could mute.
Hebrew.
You can mute yourself now.
Yeah. Even if it's in Hebrew, I'm not interested.
He is described as an entrepreneur and sometime Hitler apologist. As Howard pointed out, wrote a letter of apology on Instagram in Hebrew, apologizing to the Jewish community for his outburst. Since October 22, West has periodically gone on anti-Semitic rants in which he appeared to threaten Jews and insisted that he loved Hitler. West said he didn't mean to cause harm and regretted any pain he may have caused. Please restrain from laughing. Regretted any harm that he may have caused and vowed to promote unity. He quote, I am committed to starting with myself and learning from this experience, close quote. Kanye West, ye. Any reaction?
I think he probably
Wasn't my laugh enough?
Yeah, well, your laugh expressed a certain depth of yes. Sukasa, was that you?
No, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, Zach.
Okay. I think he probably means it, but he's also been he's been a very sick boy for a very long time. So he, in his mind, he believes that right now, but his mind changes frequently. So.
Okay. I never really thought of him much as a very sick boy, but yeah, I guess he's certainly immature and he's certainly very sick.
Yeah.
I'll give you.
No, I mean, he's on a lot of medications when he takes them, but
okay, that's interesting.
It's hard for the family to get him to take them. So,
okay, I just thought it was interesting. I don't see him getting his contracts back anytime soon, but that's interesting. Next, Israel's defense minister issued a public statement this week. First of all, saying that since the ground war started, 158 soldiers, Sahal, IDF, have been killed. So, doing numbers is very hard. Do you want to compare that to 20,000 guys? No, you don't want to do that. But he pointed out to the Knesset that 158 soldiers have died, and as Israel will be forced to cut way back on the large-scale bombing and focus more on hand-to-hand combat, the number of Israeli soldiers who will die, the number will grow. So while that's going on, Gallant, Yoav Gallant, who is the Minister of Defense, said the following: Israel will punish Hamas over the brutal October 7th attack, whether it takes months or years. That expression reverberated across the world. Any thought that Israel could achieve a significant end-game victory in anything resembling short term seems to be what Gallant feels is out of reach. Howard?
Well, I just wanted to mention, in case anyone wants to look at it or hasn't seen it, the article in today's New York Times by a guy named Neil McFarquhar, who has very good credentials for writing such an article, I think, explaining how there's a lot of skepticism as to whether Israel can ever meet the goals that they've put forward, and that especially in terms of destroying Hamas in any way, and how Hamas is sort of designed in a decentralized way to withstand pretty much anything Israel could do.
The word decentralized, very important, right?
Yeah, well, it's it's like you kill one part of it, and the other part of it has a new tentacles pops out and bites you in the ass.
I have the picture of Medusa, the head, the snakes, and
you can't. Or it could be that something new would have a different name.
Yes.
He didn't even get to that. He talked about Hamas.
Yes, thank you.
Hamas will not be destroyed according to him. Now, I don't know. He could be wrong. I mean, because
the notion
right.
that Israel, with its super great army and all that, can finish this off short term is simply not there. Merle.
I'm just thinking that I don't know that this is going to end in months or years. I think there are levels of Hamas that are going to make this perpetuate forever. They want Israel gone and the people gone. And I don't think that they're going to give in any way. That's my biggest fear.
Thank you. And the answer to that is yes. And that's not a great answer, Steve.
One of the things about that statement is an acknowledgement that people don't appreciate that Israel cares about loss of life in Gaza, because if you really want to be efficient, bomb Gaza off the map and get all the Hamas people there and let everybody know you're not coming back. The fact that they're not doing that and are still being accused of having no concern for human life is just wrong.
Okay, let me just throw this in. You know that the governing forces of Hamas are in Qatar, right? They're not in the West Bank. They're not in Gaza.
But many leaders are.
Pardon? They are some, but the top leaders are in Qatar.
The
And-
people raising the
without
money are in
fighters, though.
Qatar.
And okay, please, Brian.
Yeah, I think one thing that I just feel like I know is the diversity of the narrative, like that there is like the actual ground war, ground level attacks, and how like what Israel would be stating is a little bit excessive. But at the same time, I think that they have to be excessive and say these almost like hyperbolic statements in order to get the backing of those that will back them. And I think that if they don't do that and they say, we'll try to end the like Hamas leadership in Gaza, but it'll be hard. If they show any skepticism, it will yield a negative result in their support on the world stage. And I think that there is a really big like magnifying glass that's being put on these world leaders like the UN and the US and all these different entities that I think will like set up the stage for like future wars, future conflicts. I think that it's pretty clear that there will be some degree of maybe Hamas will be taken out, but there will be some sort of younger, newer terrorist organization that will come up, just like the Medusa head that you're talking about.
Yeah, and younger in the context of terrorism, you're going to throw in more cruel, hard. They're not going to be whatever the weakness, the softness of the Palestine Authority. Up until now, they were not into all-out conflict.
Yeah, and I think you can see like how the world leaders, specifically the UN, are dealing with Hamas. It's showing the younger terrorist members what the world will allow them to get away with. You
Super.
know, it's not going to be any better.
What the world will let them get away with. Yes. I don't ever know. Herb or Sylvia, one of you?
Fact is that Hamas or its progeny is not going to disappear. What already has disappeared is support for Israel in what it's doing. Whether they're committing war crimes or they're not committing war crimes, 20 some odd thousand people in Gaza have died, and who knows who's buried under the rubble, and who knows who's going to be wounded and incapable of doing anything for the rest of their lives. The fact that the United States is still officially saying we support them, I think is masking, I don't know if the word is anger, but concern on the Biden administration that we are basically supporting a different version of a terrorist organization.
Mhm.
You're
Because what
saying
they are,
that
what they
Israel,
are doing in Gaza, to me, is terrorism.
Oh,
What
yeah.
Israel is doing in Gaza?
Yes, yes.
okay.
Some people believe
I
I think the
Wait, wait.
numbers are a little skewed.
Let's have I love Sylvia. Don't attack her. But her opinion is not restricted to her.
Mhm.
Okay? It's a strong feeling out there that whatever else Israel, nobody trusts the Israeli government, including the Israeli people. Nobody trusts the government. And whatever the government says about, we're going to do peace or this or going to that or whatever, don't believe them. And the mass clearly believes that it's to Bibi's perceived self-advantage to be the hard-nosed fighter, killer, defender. What did he say? Like Trump said, I am your retribution. Is that what he said? I am your retribution. Bibi is their retribution, and they like that. So it's very complicated. And if any of you now want to attack Sylvia, you're invited to do so. Anybody? Okay, Sukasa?
Well, I kind of, in a way, I do agree with Sylvia to a certain extent. I'm finding the death just abhorrent, and but what I also find is that Israel are they going after Hamas and trying to cut off the funding? If you want to get rid of Medusa, you got to cut off the funding, because as we've described it, it's like I forget those little one cell things that they just keep multiplying. If you cut off a leg, they create a new leg. But if
Are you saying that Hamas is an amoeba?
well, I'm saying that whatever you cut off, it grows a new one. And I think that the only way to destroy it is to cut off the funding. And I'm wondering why that's going through Qatar, I'm assuming, and why the Israelis aren't better at doing that.
Okay, I want to take a small range of opinions. There's a lot more to do. Steve?
I just have two things. One, I don't know what Israel's choice is, and I agree that it is better to be hated by the world and exist than to be wiped off the face of the earth. And the other thing, as to all of this bravado, within the culture in the Middle East, if you don't talk tough, even if it's exaggerated, you get no respect. I mean, there's a limit, there's a very limited range on how you can express what your goals and ambitions are.
Thank you. Okay, I see Howard, I see Brian.
Well, something that I've always been interested in, especially when I was working as a physicist, is the idea of nuclear war. And see, we just happened to watch the Oppenheimer movie, which reminds you of things that I've been very interested in for a long time, which is that those, the planet's going to get blown to smithereens by the existence of these weapons. And if you had said 10 years ago that we were going to have the situation where we have now, where Iran is just about on the verge of being able to build a nuclear weapon, and they're not just secretly crazy. They say, we're going to kill all the Jews. Well, the logic, what even you look at what Herman Kahn wrote, it was like 100%, the planet's going to get blown up. It's all foretold. It's almost like the book of Revelation is being fulfilled.
Yeah, by the way, I'm wondering, Howard, do you think Hamas would also target Jews by choice or Jews by patrilineality? Maybe they could solve all of our problems by making halachic decisions regarding whom they're going to kill. That was not intended to be serious.
I'm sure there are people who would think about that.
Oh, okay. So, okay, Brian.
Yeah, I think I want to address Sylvia's point. I do think it is a consistent opinion and like perspective that what is coming out from Israel is actually like similar to terrorist activity. However, I would just kind of challenge based more so off of the line of at least to me, like strict, like I don't want to say logic because I don't want to like demean like you saying like you're not logical or whatever, but that like just to be able to count 20,000 people in the amount of time that they put these numbers out is pretty like hard. And like Israel right now, based off of October the 7th, like they just more recently figured out like the exact number that was even killed on that one day, however many months ago. And I think that at the very least, what needs to be said is that all life matters, and the lives of the Gazans matter 100%, and the lives of the Israeli military matter just as much too. And I think to look at the goal of how do we preserve life well, I think like in this situation, it's ending the reign of Hamas in Gaza, and it'll probably look like ending the reign of a terrorist organization in the West Bank eventually, because they're probably going to also come out too. But I do think that with that, it is important to know that there's probably those numbers probably aren't as accurate as stated at this point, and to know that we are in a war of ideas and a war of the like media. We're not really like aware, because what's being portrayed and what we're seeing, all of it is coming through a filter of something, and it's not necessarily the most accurate information that we could have.
Brian, where do you get your international news?
My international news comes from my wife.
I didn't expect that answer. Okay.
Oh, really? We get it kind of from I would say like a diversity of different spaces. I think I'm 30. So as a young guy, I get my news from oh yeah. Everyone say hi. I get my news from different sources, like Fox News. I try to be unbiased, so also noting like the other side, as well as Instagram, Facebook, any sort of like discussions with coworkers or articles that I've read. And
the reason I asked that,
JIJ, yeah.
When I asked our 23-year-old grandson who is very aware of what's going on in the world. I said, where do you get your information from? He started talking to me about Substacks and you know,
Like Reddit?
that didn't sound like New York Times. Okay. Substack.
Yeah. I think for my generation, there is an overall assumption that the mass media is just corrupt and has its own agenda. And it's just
Throw that stuff. Oh, yeah, take this.
Oh, you guys are in the same house. Oh no. Okay, bye. Okay. Here, let me help you down. There you go. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, I think that we just assume that all of media is corrupt. So there's some aspect of like, let's not go based off of traditional news sources, you know?
Okay, I wanted to make a reference to Howard being a physicist. I want to, this will appeal to you directly, Howard. A couple of nights ago, we were at a small dinner party with two physicists, and I didn't understand anything that they were saying. So I just thought I'd, join with you.
Physicists who aren't good communicators.
Yeah, my grandson Gabriel is here, and unsolicited and unprepared, speak into the microphone. Gabriel, where do you get your international news? Speak into the microphone so they can hear you.
Usually the Wall Street Journal, probably.
The which?
The Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. We may be losing Gabriel. I'm not sure, but yes, Wall Street Journal. Yes. Okay. The only thing I would say to you, Sylvia, and actually with several other comments, you got to subdue Hamas. You've got to rearrange the political landscape in the West Bank, and we must change governments in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a triad. That we can't speak of one without the other, because even if the PA brings on new leadership and Israel still has Bibi and the ultra wing, that's me, ultra right wing government, there's not going to be any peace.
Right. Agreed.
So it does require broad scale. Sylvia, the only thing that I had personal trouble with is applying the term terrorists to Israel. And I know I have a closer connection to Israel than I do to the West Bank Palestinians. Okay. To me, it hits very harsh. Their behaviors may be behaviors that resemble terrorists. But I can't bring myself to say they are terrorists. I can say with you that certain behaviors of the IDF and the military and whatever else are behaviors that are reflective of a terrorist approach. But I just can't bring myself to say the IDF is a terrorist organization or that Israel is a terrorist state. And now, Sylvia, you have the right of rebuttal before I silence you.
I think you're splitting hairs. If any other country was doing what Israel was doing, as in the Russians in Ukraine, we would say they were carrying out terrorist acts. And while I understand your deep feelings for Israel, I think what they're doing is morally wrong. And I know why they're doing it, but that doesn't make it right.
Can you describe what exactly you're just talking about as morally wrong? What is morally wrong?
You may dispute the numbers, and I don't know how good they are, but bombing refugee camps after telling the refugees they'd be safe there, destroying entire cities because probably there are Hamas leaders hidden somewhere in there. I just think that that is morally wrong. I don't know how to make it better. I just think that what they did is wrong.
You need to get your facts straight before you make an argument.
Whoa. I don't recall having called anyone else. Okay. Okay, Sylvia, are you good? I wanted to give you a complete chance to respond to what Brian was at. What are you doing? Risa, Zach, Brian.
I am so distraught over this conversation. I can't even tell you. I tried to look up what is the definition of being a terrorist. What does it mean to use that word and throw it around like it's an okay word to use towards Israel? They're in a war. They are wearing uniforms. They are trying to defeat a terrorist organization. You cannot make a parallel between the terrorism of Hamas and the fact that Israel is fighting for its life against a terrorist organization and then call them terrorists because people are dying. People always die in a war. We're in a situation where we're fighting people who are trying to wipe us off the map. And as we said, even in 1948, be careful. We can only lose one war.
They're trying to wipe the Palestinians off the face of the earth.
No, they aren't.
Why?
They're trying to war Hamas off the map, and I wish them well. And in the
meanwhile,
process, people died. People died when the bomb was dropped after Japan and on top of Japan. And I grew up with a father who said to me, I was in China at the time. I was being prepared for a march by the Japanese. I was going to be wiped out. There was only one way to stop that war. Were we terrorists because we dropped the bomb? I don't think that the word terrorism belongs here, and it's very upsetting.
That's a completely different
Okay.
story.
I would like to say, you may think that in 6 minutes you're going to get off this call, right? And you can go about your business. I, on the other hand, will be dealing with an irate wife. Okay, so it's going to be continuing. I want to go to Zach's and then to Brian.
Sylvia, I think you're very brave for what you said. And in a lot of ways, I agree. I think the war has reached a point where it's just vengeance now. It's not about a war anymore. It does appear that the goal is to get rid of Palestinians. And I think when you say you're going to get rid of Gaza, it's like saying we're going to get rid of Nazis. We didn't get rid of Nazis. So thinking you can kill enough people and get rid of the ones you're after. And, Israel brags about its intelligence community and its capabilities and its military capabilities, and it's the top in the world. Well, we saw that wasn't so in the way that this all happened in the first place. There were a lot of mistakes made. But I also think if their military and people are that smart, they should have a smarter way of finding those terrorists that they're looking for instead of killing everybody. And, I told someone I chose Judaism. I wasn't born into it. And part of it for me was that I expect better of Jews. I expect a higher moral ground. I expect people to say, this was really screwed up what happened in the past. It doesn't mean that we have to participate in it. And I think moving forward, we are changing the narrative. When we, in the future, talk about the Holocaust and show the pictures, people are going to show pictures of Gaza. And it's pretty bleak and frightening. And I don't think you can say anymore, well, that's not a comparison, and we had more people in. Horror is horror. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to move quickly. Brian.
Yeah, I think that although I disagree with what you have said, I wholeheartedly appreciate your right to say it and to hold your opinions. And that's great. But I do think that in some aspect, there is a propensity of humanity to try to simplify complex things. And I think that it's a simplification of a complex issue that you're like to say Israel is trying to wipe out all of the Palestinians. I think that's simplifying a very complex
Well, I don't think it's simple.
group of messages that has been portrayed and actually propagated by Israel. And I think that there is a big emphasis from Israel to do everything that they could do in a modern war area. This isn't the ancient times where like one country would bring another army to another country, and then it would be the lines were clear. Here, the lines aren't so clear. So when Risa brings up like they're in uniform, Israel's in uniform, like they are a military organization, or not organization, they're just a military of a country, and they're acting as so. However, like on the other side, Hamas is not. They're dressed in normal clothes, they're hiding, they're like, so it's a lot more like guerrilla warfare. And then to one aspect of what you were saying as far as to bomb civilians, I mean, frankly, the history kind of proves you wrong, that every war in history has had civilian casualties. And if you would want to look back, like the most clear one is look at Dresden in World War II. Like way more people died in Dresden than in Gaza. Way more people were civilians that died in Dresden. And that was from Britain. Britain bombed Dresden so terribly that the civilian casualty count was like way like enormous. However, would it be moral for us to say that Britain was wrong for what they did? I think to say that Hitler was the clear evil in World War II and the Axis powers were the evil group, that's pretty easy to say that, right? However, then if you flip the switch and say Britain's a terrorist organization because they had a large amount of civilian casualties, I think that is to simplify a complex situation.
Thank you very much. Gabriel, did you have? You have to come up to the microphone.
Yeah, well, first of all, before I say anything, I want to apologize if anything that I said has been said. I can't actually hear anything through my grandfather's headphones, so you have to excuse me on that front. But the one thing that I really wanted to make sure I said is something that we've talked about a lot. I'm at Carnegie Mellon up in Pittsburgh, and we've had a lot of these conversations on campus. And one of the things that's often talked about is this is not like a war that's been fought before. It's very easy to think of this as a war between Hamas, between Gaza and Israel, but there's never before been a time where a nation, a truly powerful nation, has had to deal with fighting a terrorist organization, right? And the problem with that is if they're not going to if there's going to be a lack of following the rules of war from one side, that inevitably is going to have to be done by both sides. And that's an unfortunate reality. And there are definitely some unfortunate and unagreeable things that have been done from the Israeli side. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but I think it's important to remember that, the first engagement of this war was something that is unfathomable to begin with, right? So when you look at that, you have to say, okay, well, how does Israel respond to that, right? It's easy to say that this is the wrong response, but what's the correct alternative? Right. And there really might not be one. And again, the length to which they've taken it, there may be some problems with that. But to then go and call it terrorism for kind of counter engaging in something, I don't think is the right way to look at it from my perspective.
Yeah. And also like the US and when 9/11 happened, the US launched a 15-20 year long war. And we weren't terrorists.
Okay. Now we're unfortunately at the end. I, with all of the power invested in me, want to give Sylvia the final word.
No.
No, you had your hand up.
Herb has his hand up.
Oh, how would I know that?
Sorry.
Okay, Herb.
The thing is that Israel has already lost. They've lost the population, the popular vote of everybody in the world, of every country. The only country that's still on their side is the United States, and may lose us. I don't know. But the idea is that, to me, they have lost the major war, which is the acceptance of the world. They're almost absolutely alone, and that is so terrible that they need to do something to improve that. And by continuing this bombing and going on does not help. They do need more. If they're going to do that, even if they knock out all the Hamas, bad guys that they know of, they still have lost.
Okay, I would like to comment to this community that this has been the best conversation we've had in the whole process. And I thank Sylvia for opening it up. And I thank the way all of us responded. Now, if you want to go over, we can dox Sylvia's house, and we can put her address up, and you can put snakes in the mailbox, whatever people do. But the fact of the matter is, this was a great conversation and really, really important. So I'm going to end with this story. A local restaurant in the Druze village of Julis in northern Israel, a Druze restaurant in a Druze village has asked for and received kosher certification because they wanted to provide prepackaged meals for IDF soldiers and evacuees. So in order to have their food circulated by the army and the government to the refugees, this Druze restaurant, I can tell you, I don't know if I'm ever getting back to Israel, but if I get back to Israel, I'm going to go to the village, to the Noor, Noor restaurant, and I'm going to order a damn big meal and just say, thank you. Just going to say thank you. Shana Tova. Happy New Year, everybody. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Love you all. Thank you all. This was excellent. Thank you
so much.
Bye, baby. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Give me a name.
Bye-bye. Anna.
Anna. Hi.
Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
yes. Bye, Anna. Okay.
Bye.